You're welcome.
Thank you for being my friend and doing this.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being my friend.
Okay, so others understand what this journey that you've been on is like, and the depth of courage that you've had to reach at times. And it has been a journey of pitfalls and courage to get out of those pitfalls. Tell us what it's been like, how you actually got from where you were to where you needed to be. What was that journey like for you?
I always knew the journey of, it was approximately 8.5 years, and I always knew that 8.5 years, and I didn't know when it started, obviously it was going to extend to that period, but I always knew that it would come down to being described in 2, maybe 3 sentences. And it's those 2 to 3 sentences that I've never been able to actually condense to reflect what it was, except for that there was finding that light at the end of the tunnel and holding on to that light, and that light getting brighter and brighter and brighter. At times there was no light, it was completely dark. I'd close my eyes and there was just no light at all. I couldn't even see where the light was going to be, where it was going to come from. And when the light started, it was only it would come and go. And then that light got brighter and brighter and brighter, and I knew that I was on the way out of that dark tunnel.
Okay. You weren't actually the person who was injured.
No.
You were the wife of someone who was injured. But you were the one that carried the burden of all of it. Because someone had to understand what was going on, facilitate what was going on, and allow as much healing process as possible for your husband to actually just focus on that. So, as the caregiver, as the person who actually had to find all the necessary steps, how easy was that, or how difficult was that?
Probably I'll start the story with the previous, because there was actually 2 injuries prior to the last one, and I'd already had a part to play in those previous 2 injuries, but because this particular injury involved a different system, it wasn't self-insured, it was with the actual corporation itself. That in itself took me a long time to get my head around the difference between dealing with a self-insured as opposed to dealing with an insurance agent contracted to the system. I found that I had to knock on a lot of doors, and I knew the legislation like the back of my hand in the end. I could just about quote the subsections and page numbers. It's really difficult because you deal with medical, with your private health insurance, and I had been in a motor vehicle accident, so I dealt with insurance companies and obviously with the 2 previous ones. But this particular injury, because there was a previous injury, that actually had a huge impact on his last claim. And the fact that you knew that something, or the doctors would say that you were entitled to this, or this is what was needed, or this surgery was needed, and to accept that there would be possibly about 6 no's before you'd get the final yes, which you were entitled to under the legislation. I found that so hard on a personal level to deal with, and it was that understanding that, and that's where you come into it, was just having those connections, or that person that was able to connect what element it was, whatever we were facing at the time, because you just deal with one and then there would be something else that would raise its head, and then something else, and sometimes you were dealing with multiple aspects of either the recovery or the injury or the subsequent operations and equipment. For example, equipment that was needed. That's where the Craig's Table model was able to help me go through that. Without that, I was running blind. It was just horrid. It was the only word I could use is horrid.
So when you found Craig's Table model, when you put your feet firmly in the middle of that, what did that feel like?
Oh, I held on for I mean, there were times, and you know, we often laugh about it now, but it was a 24/7 service. Now, whether it was a 24/7 service before I come along, but I actually turned it into being that.
It was.
But I clung for you know, and I've got a few eyes that are starting to weep, but to have something that was solid to hold on to, that could then put me onto what I needed, or what he needed, or what we both needed. Because at the time, because of the previous injuries, we weren't getting paid from April the 26th right through to December the 16th, and it was tough, Rosemary. Tough on many levels. Really tough. Which you know the history. You basically stepped just about every road with me, side by side.
Yeah. And if you could take a lesson from that and give it to the scheme, what would that lesson be?
You really do need someone as a broker. That's the only word that I can use, and I've been thinking about what word I could use, but a broker will actually broker and be a third party, and basically that's what I found Craig's Table. It was my brokerage to then be able to put into the language. It might have been the language that I was dealing with the psychiatrist, or the language that I was dealing with the chemist, or the claims manager, or the rehabilitation facilitator. Everyone has a different language. They all work with different acronyms. I had no idea, and of course over that time the language was changing within the industry, and Craig's Table was up with all the legislation, all the changes, all the acronym changes, and quite often it was just interpretation of what was required and bringing it down to a simplicity.
So did you feel that you could actually hold your own ground in that?
Oh, it took a while, but bit by bit I was doing my own research, and then Craig's Table was just used as a point of, am I correct in what I'm reading here? And then I'd get a yes or a no. So absolutely, I think it gave me the strength that I could then take it back and start to work through it.
Okay. So if you could take that lesson and put it into the families in the injured worker community, what lesson do you think you'd give them? Because as you know,
it really disrupts. I mean, I had to stop work. I had to completely focus, which as a partner of an injured worker, you shouldn't really have to do, but I just couldn't see myself going off to work and him having to struggle through 8, 10, 12 hours. You've really got to make a decision that your life's changed, it has changed, and accept it. So has to be a level of acceptance. That comes first, I think.
Would it be easier if you actually had a clear understanding of what the next few weeks, few months,
Absolutely.
few years?
Absolutely. And I think that was my biggest struggle in the first instance, is you don't know where to go, where to turn. And I just literally started door knocking, and that was probably because of my past experience and what I knew had to happen, because there was no way that what was needed was going to come to me. So I started to literally door knock and phone and write. Now, all that could have been saved had all the information been passed over that Craig Table actually... You had everything, Rosemary. It was all there in one spot, and that could have saved a lot of grief in the early days.
So you think, given that we've got such wonderful technology now, that portals on websites should be able to link someone who's doing that legwork directly
Absolutely.
here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. No, because every, looking back, every facet of the industry works like a body. It might be the hand of a body, or it might be the leg of the body. They do work independently, but they still form part of your new life, and that's what it is. It's your new life. You've got all these people that weren't in your life prior that now you have to deal with, and you've got to learn how to communicate with these people. And coming out from an emotional side, so be it anger or be it frustration, gets nobody anywhere. It's just really the level of understanding. And that's what Craig's Table did.
So dealing with the professional strangers that the industry provide you with.
Which we were grateful for, don't get me wrong. There was always a level of gratitude.
Yeah.
But it was just the mechanics of how it works. And the quicker that both parties understood what role there was, things started to move along then. But it wasn't until there was an understanding of what everyone's role was within the bigger picture. And I think the first thing that really jumped to me was the logo at the time was a jigsaw. And I could see all the pieces, but I couldn't put the jigsaw together. And there was no way that I was ever going to do that myself, because I didn't have the experience, the training,
So you think here at Craig's Table we can walk with people
Absolutely.
and take them on their journey from where they are to where they need to be?
Absolutely. And the thing is, you don't even know where you need to be. That's the sad thing. If you had a crystal ball, you might have some hope of, but it's a whole different world. And I don't believe that there'd be very many people that would be in that position that would just go like, a duck to water. Because it comes with a lot of education. There's a lot involved in all these elements that I, as a wife, had never been involved in. So I had to do a lot of quick education to bring myself up to speed, which was, as you know, it was hours and hours, weeks, months of educating for a good outcome. Because otherwise, all I could see was there was just going to be, in a corner, a complete wreck, no good to anyone, and that was where it was going to head.
So if there was that support there, and this is I'm not sure what it is, a question or it's an observation, but if there was support there for the families, do you think the family breakups that we know happen, do you think that would lessen, or is just sometimes it's just the way the injury changes a person, or is it just a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both there. It comes back to that education. If you know what the animal looks like, you know how to deal with the animal. But when you don't know what the animal looks like, you don't even know how to deal with it. That's the whole thing. If it's about having the ability to know what you're dealing with, that's the big thing. If there was, and that's where Craig's table was just absolutely, yeah. If it hadn't been for that, I don't know where I'd be today. I really don't.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to say? Okay, probably a better question. So here I am. I'm giving you the magic wand. What do you want to see for Craig's table?
I'd like to see
And a
Craig,
blank check.
and that's the thing. It all comes at a cost, and I understand that. But I'd love to see for Craig's table to be the unification or the glue that actually can put people in the system back together and connect to the people that needs to be connected. And I strongly believe that Craig's table has got all the tools to be able to do that. I know that there's going to be someone injured within the workplace today, and I know somebody's life's going to be changed today. If I stop and think about it long enough, it saddens me that they don't know at this particular moment, or when that happens, that there's a facility like Craig's table that will be able to step them through. And the journey's not going to be easy, don't get me wrong, but it can be made to be it can be made easier. So the journey isn't easy, but it can be simplified. And I think that's what Craig's table does, is it simplifies the journey that we all have to take anyway. And I'd really like to see easier access to the facilities that Craig Table can offer, because they are a connector. They've got a huge community now that are working together, and you've got access. You know who to go to. You understand people's needs, their different personality types, how they learn, who you can connect. You're a brilliant connector, and I think that was the big thing. It was the loneliness and the isolation that was eliminated. And yeah, so that would be my want. That would to place more of Craig's Table around Australia and also the world.
Okay, thank you. I'll take the one back. Is there something that you believe that the system, the scheme, needs to know that the injured worker community really doesn't know, but an urban myth actually creates as true? Well, if there is such a beast, what would that beast be?
That beast would be the fact that when you do need external help from charities, because you're under the work cover legislation, you're technically still working. Now, that technicality then comes out with things like food hampers, fuel vouchers. You can't just go to a charity whose funding is collected or is bought by collecting social security numbers. So if you haven't got a healthcare card, which you can't obtain because you're still technically working, you can't even go to a lot of the well-known charities for a food hamper or for any assistance. It might be in the way of clothing for a new job, or food to put on the table, or a fuel voucher because you know you're waiting for money to come through, but you still need to get to a doctor's appointment. You can't actually access any of those known charities because of that reason. And most people didn't, well, I had no idea. I just thought, oh, well, you know, people in need just go to a charity. But WorkCover's a different animal. So because you're technically still employed, you can't access any of those features, whether it be finance or whether it be food or any of the roles that those charities provide within the community, which I struggled with.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a very personal question, and please feel free to say too personal. There were times when I knocked on your door and left food there, or brought food in for you. And I know, because I know you quite well now, I know pride came into that
Oh, absolutely.
a lot. But once you got over your own personal pride, and the need, the knowing that someone else understood the need.
Without words spoken to,
Yeah.
by the way.
Were there times when that food was all there was?
Most definitely. Absolutely, most definitely. And it does come into pride, and it does come into, and I've seen it with my own eyes, being involved with some of your work over the years, that people that you know that need it, they will still reject the offer because somebody else might need it more. And I know that was a big element in my world, and I've also seen it with a lot of other people too, because someone else might need it more. But absolutely, there were times.
So there are times when swallowing the pride was the best pill to take.
Yes. And mind you, each and everything that was given with those food hampers, I used every last crumb. I think I developed skills of making things out of, you know, you just do. You develop a different skill set, this different skill level that I now take that as a blessing. That was a gift. But at the time, it was a hard lesson. It was a hard lesson. But I now take that experience as a gift.
Yeah. It's interesting because you said others might need it more, because we hear it every week. Someone don't put that in. Someone else might need that more, because that pride is there, and we can't take their pride away. We can only build their pride, but we know we need to help them at the same time. It's a very interesting balancing act.
It is very balancing.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's so many different, and just having to do this interview, and again I come back to my original statement, that those years still have to be condensed down. If someone says, what was it like? They don't need to hear the whole epic, but just a few things of awareness that the community, society, the system possibly unaware of, which awareness is always the first part of change. And so it's number one, being aware, and it's only simple changes. The system can work and does work, and it just needs tweaking. And I think that's where Cray's Table comes into it. It's just that tweaking.
We're expert at tweaking.
Thank you.